All right, so this is the second video of this series. This time we'll be tackling a little more complex arpeggiation, things that you can definitely use in your own production. I covered a little more basic concepts when it comes to arpeggiation. I'll be sure to leave the link down below. This time we're gonna kick things up a little more and start looking into more complicated arpeggiation. And let's get into it, and I'll deep dive a little more. So what exactly is going on here? First off, these are the arpeggiations that we are going to be focusing on. Let me play this in solo. Very different from the first example we had in the previous video. Let's deep dive into this concept, and I want to show you guys how you can start applying these simple techniques in your own production. On the second channel here, the piano, the red one, I basically have the exact MIDI data, and this is what this guy sounds like. It's just a little easier for us to hear the notes. All right, I've also gone ahead and outlined the chords that we are using. If you are curious, this song is in the key of A flat major. Let's go ahead and deep dive into the chords. You'll notice that we are starting off with the D flat major 7th and then going to the tonic, the A flat. So basically this is a 2-chord jam, chord progression 4, 1, 4, 1. So let's take a look at the arpeggiation on the D flat here. So we're on the D flat clip. So in the first video, we had created an arpeggio using the 1, 2, and the 5. Remember, those were the notes of the scale we were relying on. So for instance, for this D flat major 7th, right, we use the 1, 2, and 5. And I showed you the sequence. Now we have something a little different. So for the D flat, for this example, we're going to ramp things up a little more. We're going to introduce new notes into the chord sequence. So we have the D flat, even though it's marked as C sharp, F, which is the third, major third of the D flat, A flat, C, back to D flat, and then finally F. This is what we have going on, all right? Again, very melodic, and we are basically outlining that D flat major 7th chord. We also have the third here at the very top. What's really cool with this sequence is that we are extending the notes beyond the octave. So technically our octave ends right here, from here to here, but we now entered a new octave here with the F, which is really cool because this is how you get color into your arpeggiations, okay? All right, so now let's focus on this second arpeggiated run. I'm gonna play this out. All right, very colorful. So what we have here is pretty much the same D flat major 7th chord. We have the D flat, the F, the A flat, the C natural, and then followed by the G and then the C. So where does this come from? Remember I had said that this piece is in the key of A flat major. And we're starting off the first progression being the D flat, meaning it's the 4th. So if I start off the D flat here, the second note would be E flat, and then F, and then G. So this is where that G comes into play. It's very colorful when you're playing it with the D flat in the bottom here. And you can get away with this, even though it's known as a tritone, it sounds rather dissonant. If I had the D flat up here, this sounds pretty clashy, but I have it down here. So we have the, I guess, privilege of using it without, you know, having it sound too clashy. And then as for these notes, we're pretty much just repeating the sequence over and over again. So together, it sounds like this. And then so another thing I wanted to bring your attention to would be the rhythm or the clustering of notes. I had mentioned this in the previous tutorial. And so what we're doing here is that we are expanding on that concept. So the previous video I had mentioned using 3 notes, the first, the second, and the fifth, and then you're basically repeating them. So you're getting this clusters of 3, right? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. We have something similar here. So we're using clusters of 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then we repeat the sequence. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, with a slight variation, but nonetheless, it's still a cluster of 6. And then it repeats itself. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And because we are hammering out this song in 4/4 and we're using this cluster of 6, it creates this sort of never-ending feel to it. So let me engage the metronome here and the piano. So it's kind of hard to tell where it actually begins. And I've allowed some space here. Let's play the entire sequence. And once you have it set to an instrument, you get this effect. So let's count together. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so even though the song is in 4/4, we as musicians, well, we don't have to restrict ourselves to playing these types of arpeggiators, right? We can go beyond the register and start tapping into extensions. And this is where we get those colorful So one of the things you want to make sure when you are using these higher extensions is not to overdo it. So you want to create some sort of pattern that the listener can definitely identify with and vibe with, right? So what we've done here, we're using a cluster of 6 and we're using another cluster of 6. We've made some alterations, but then right after that, we just repeat the sequence over and over again. And so that pattern is something that, you know, humans, we like. We like things to sound sort of uniform so that we can follow along. So although it is somewhat complex, there is some simplicity to it. Also, if you're going to start using these extensions, be mindful of the top note of the arpeggiated runs. For instance, these guys here. These are the notes that create a melody, and the highest note is what the listener perceives as the melody. All right, so be mindful of the top note. Just to err on the side of caution, I would probably resort to using chord tones. So again, referring back to our D flat major 7th chord. That top note is the C, the major 7th of the chord. So I'm pretty sure that will work. And then for the A flat major 7th chord here, I'm playing the G. Again, another 7th or major 7th of the chord. So I know this will work. Okay, so I know this was a lot to cover. Let's do a quick recap. This is in case you want to do arpeggiation on your own manually instead of relying on arpeggiation devices or plugins. I use them all the time, but I find that manually inputting the notes, this offers a whole level of creativity that I find the arpeggiation tools just can't offer. Tip number 1, if you're starting off, I would rely on the 1, 2, 5. I covered that in the other video. It's safe, it's easy. So tip number 2, if you're comfortable using chord tones, just outline the basic chord tones. 1, 3, 5, 7. That's all we're playing here. So tip number 3, once you're comfortable with that, go beyond the octave and keep playing upwards. Tip number 4, try to create arpeggiated runs that sound asymmetrical. So we're not playing. Instead, we're using clusters of 3, or in this context, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 before we repeat the sequence again. This allows the arpeggio to have a lot more movement. All right, so tip number 5, be mindful of the top notes. These are the notes that your listener will definitely perceive to be a melody. So you want to make sure you're making the right choices. You don't always have to use chord tones. You can always use other notes of the scale, but if you want to be on the safe side, try to use 1, 3, 5s, and 7s, and sometimes even the 9s. All right, so I know we did cover a lot here. You can always rewatch this video, and I'll be sure to link to the first video. If you found this helpful, go ahead and give me a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And with that said, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video.